Welcome, welcome, friends. We made it to Friday. Thanks so much for joining us here on 13 News Now. Plus, this is Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis, and tonight on HHL, we've got a brand new AOI, area of interest, out in the Atlantic Basin. Let's go right to it. July 18th, 2025, Friday. New area of interest in the Atlantic. And guess what? We've also got one in the Eastern Pacific. I think we're a little bit more enticed about what may be going on in the Atlantic, though. The East Pac one heading out into the open ocean, not going to be an issue. The Atlantic one might not be an issue either, but it's something to watch, and the location of it is interesting as well, and I'll show you the latest on that. Just came down from the Hurricane Center just minutes ago. So 93L, the focus of our video is pretty much all week long, was scooting along the northern Gulf Coast, moved over Florida, never developed into Dexter. Highest odds it got was 40%, but that now has moved inland and north. It did bring like 6 to 10 inches of rain, though, in portions of Louisiana where there was instances of flooding. So regardless of it getting a name or not, it was impactful to Louisiana. That new area to watch in the Atlantic, and the Eastern Pacific may flare up briefly as well. And I want to go through, we touched a little bit on this yesterday, is a rather quiet July unusual? I've got some stats on it from the last 5 hurricane seasons to share with you. All right, here's a look at tropical satellite, and I've showed you this many times over the last few weeks, and it's not unusual to have plumes of Saharan dust migrating across the Atlantic from east to west. And we've got another very large plume here. Now, what's interesting, what happens this time of the year is we start to see these plumes begin to come off the coast a little bit at higher latitudes. And that begins to open up the main development region here. Okay, and you can see here on satellite imagery, in fact, I'll switch it up, and this is actually our new area to watch. It's not an invest yet, but it's a tropical wave. It's a seedling, an African easterly wave that we actually talked about a few days ago when it was coming off the coast of Africa. Hurricane Center says there's enough model support here that at least over the next week, it has a low chance of possibly developing. Now, this is the first of which this season, and we have an AOI coming out of the main development region, and the odds right now are 20%. Could this down the line be Dexter? It's possible, 20% chance of that happening, but it's got a long ways to go, and it's moving basically west-northwest, and we'll see where this goes by the time we join. By the time I join you next week on Monday for Hurricane Hub Live at 8 o'clock, see if the odds have gone up at all, or if it was completely sheared apart, or if it encountered all that dust. All right, let's talk about July now in terms of hurricane season and what's normal, what's not, in terms of how much activity we should see. Going back dozens and dozens or decades worth of hurricane seasons, you can see that July is not very eventful. Have there been hurricanes that have made landfall? Have there been major hurricanes in July? Yes, but it's rare. Okay, to have a quiet season is much more common than to have an extremely active one, okay? In fact, we'll get into the trivia question because I talked about the most active season, or the most active July is 5 named storms, and that was one year was in 2005, and the question was, what was the other year? I'll tell you that when we talk about that. But 5 named storms. We've had one, and you look back at the other last 5 hurricane seasons in July. We had 2 last year, 1 in 23, 2 in 22, 1 in 21, and then the anomalous year 2020 when we had 30 overall. But look at the season totals, okay? Now, aside from 22, all of which were above normal in terms of what's an average activity level for a hurricane season, 14 named storms. We had that in 22, but last year, 23, both came in above normal. 21 was above normal. Of course, it was extremely above normal activity in 2020, the most active season on record, but we also had 6 storms in July. So what I'm trying to say here is that even though we've had 1 named storm, I mean, maybe we'll see that AOI turn into a named storm and get 2, but we've had 1, Chantal, earlier this month. It doesn't mean that the hurricane season is a wash. The last several seasons, we get to July, we have these low numbers, and everybody throws in the towel saying, oh, the seasonal forecast for above average season is out the window. It's going to be quiet. It's not the case. Then August hits, and then it's like flipping a switch in the basin, and everything becomes more favorable, and storms start popping on up left and right. So that's what we're looking at. That's what we experienced so far this July, and it is forecast. Again, the outlook is for another above normal season. Now in the eastern Pacific, we've got hardly anything going on, but I told you there's another area. This time it's like way out to the west. And there's Hawaii, okay? This is going to be building in that general direction here. That's also got a low chance in the next 7 days of developing. You can see the cluster of storms here. There's a lot of it. But again, as it gains latitude, it's going to encounter colder ocean waters. So not the most likely to develop, but we've also seen systems develop out here and then actually approach the Hawaiian Islands. It's happened numerous times. Sometimes they hold together and impact Hawaii. It's not common, but it happens. So we'll watch that one too in the eastern Pacific. Next name on the list in the East Pac would be Gil, coming off the last two that were major hurricanes, Flossie and Eric. So Gil would be up next if that area of interest does get organized. All right, here was yesterday's trivia question, okay? The most named storms in July is 5. This occurred in 2005, the year of Katrina. And what other year? What other season? Well, that occurred in 2020, okay? We had 5 or 6 named storms in July. In fact, we had 6, so that makes it even more, but they had at least 5. 2 hurricanes and 3 tropical storms. In fact, the 6th was a tropical depression, so it didn't get a name. But here's the names that did form in July 2020. Edouard, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, and then Isaias. That one was pretty impactful for us here in the 13 News Now viewing area. That made landfall here in South Carolina and tracked through our area and sparked deadly tornadoes in eastern North Carolina back in 2020 with Isaias, and that was the last storm of July of that year. All right, here's Monday's trivia question that we'll get into more depth with. We talked about the strongest hurricane in regard to wind speeds, right? We talked about that was Allen with 190-mile-per-hour winds. How about the strongest in regard to the lowest pressure in millbars? Was it Allen 2? Was it Irma, Wilma, or was it Katrina? I'll have the answer for you on Monday on Hurricane Hub Live. But in the meantime, scan the QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It is information on supplies. If we have the QR code, maybe not, but you've seen it in past episodes here. I want to remind you that join us here every weeknight, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. For Hurricane Hub Live. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.